The term legend is used quite freely in football, but I think when you're considering legends, certainly as far as managers are concerned, then Bill Struth is up there with the best of them. To be honest, he's iconic in a club. Uh, Obviously, that's when you walk down down Copeland Road and onto Edmondson Drive. First thing you see is Bill Struth main stand. So the club eventually get round to naming the stand after him. We've got the Bill Struth bust. We've got the portrait in the trophy room. So his importance to the club is clear, but his importance goes much further than Rangers. He was one of the senior personalities in football through the 20s right up to the 50s.
What do we know about how he dealt with players and maybe dealt with everyone else at that time?
Well, I think he brought, I can't even say old school because it was obviously an old period, but he brought so many things to the club. I've got to say a lot of things that were perceived to have been brought by him were already there, but he certainly reinforced them. Like the standards, the club had always established fairly high standards in every department. The standards of the play, the standards of the players, the standards of how they should behave. And the standards of how they dressed, which was one of his key attributes. They called him the Beau Brummel of football, and he had a number of suits in his wardrobe in the manager's office. So he always demanded high standards of them. Great expectations of them as players as well. So he set these high standards, as I say, but he also expected them to perform. So, for example, the football field, his attitude was, I pick the players, it's their job to go out there and play. And so what he had to do was to, as he once said, he created the discipline for them, made sure they were fit, put them out there. But after that, it was up to them to perform. So there was a great reliance on him, but he was certainly the driving force behind them and behind the team.
18 league titles in 34 years is an incredible tally. But even at that time, when Scottish football was so competitive, there was so many clubs would come and challenge Rangers. I mean, give us an idea of just the scale of that achievement.
Well, I would say, and a lot of fans would say, it wasn't 18 league titles, it was 25 league titles. And I think you've got to consider it in that context, because although the Warriors were declared unofficial, they did play for a championship, and it featured the top teams at that time. Albeit in some cases the teams were bolstered by imports, but by and large it was Rangers were playing as the top team, as a solid team against others who were in the same position, the normal challengers they would have faced during that period. So when we talk about his 34 years of management, you either take out the 7 years of the war, or the 6 years of the war, or 7 years where we lost football, and say that basically his 18 championships were over a reduced period, or else you've got to consider these championships. And I think it's certainly one that we can get into, and the fans like to get into, but as winning 9 in a row through that period. But certainly he was Rangers were the dominant force, and he was the guy really behind it all. So 18 championships, 25 championships, massive.
I appreciate this is more of a hypothetical question, but the 20s and the 30s, when there wasn't organised European competition, but any time that Rangers did take on some of the best teams in Europe in friendly matches, for example, the results were fantastic largely. I mean, where maybe, would Rangers, had there been European competition back then, how do you think Rangers would have performed, and what does it maybe say about Rangers standing in world football as created by Bill Struth as it would have been in those days?
Well, as you say, it is a hypothetical football, but you've got to consider that many of the nations who have reached the heights nowadays were nowhere near that kind of competitive level. Some of them are amateur, for example. Danish football, for example, was largely amateur at that time. But a lot of the teams didn't have clubs of the standing of Rangers. And whenever there were big matches to be played, even internationally, for example, against Rapid Vienna in the early 30s, Rangers were the go-to team because they had such standing in world football. I would be surprised if through that tenure of Bill Struth's management, if we hadn't won a European trophy had there been one at that time, because that was just the level we were at. If anything, matches against English teams were seen to be the pinnacle of football, and we always fared very, very well against them.
Absolutely. And today, from a historical perspective, how fantastic is it that his name is still so revered around Ibrox, and is someone that his standards and his traditions, the Rangers support still very much. He is the go-to man. Everyone still recognises the name of Bill Struth and everything he achieved.
Well, the Rangers are very proud of their history, and quite rightly so, and that perpetuates through to the managers and even to the players who come. Again, spoke to some of the players and some of the managers who've said as soon as you walk into Ibrox, they just get this feeling of grandeur, of importance, of significance. And when you have a manager such as Bill Struth, who was there for 34 years as a manager, and held such high esteem in the game and won so many things, then clearly he's got to be a figurehead for them all in terms of what they want to achieve. So he is so important, not just in relation to our history, but the future, and setting the standards of people of what people have to attain. I mean, I know, for example, I had a chat about this one time before, Nick, but even Steven Gerrard has looked at what he's achieved and admired that. So I think people like Struth, and particularly him, do set very, very high standards that all the rest try and emulate.
Bill Struth, of course, took over from William Wilton in 1920. How did things change when Struth took over as manager?
Well, they changed quite radically, in fact, Nick, because at that time William Wilton was the manager of the club, and effectively he did everything. He arranged the fixtures, he probably ordered the toilet rolls in the club, he probably ordered all the pencils and signed the players, of course, and his role was far-reaching, got involved in not stadium design, but stadium construction, repairs, all these kind of things. And when Bill Struth was originally approached, he didn't particularly want the job. First of all, he didn't feel he was up to it. And secondly, he probably had some trepidation that it involved a lot of things that he didn't have particular experience of. So Wilton, for example, was an accountant, well used to an office environment. So what happened when Bill Struth was appointed was they split the role. And so they appointed a club secretary at the time. So a lot of the administrative duties were taken over by William Rogers Simpson at that time. Struth himself, who had been training, had to be replaced. He brought in a new guy called George Livingston, who had played at the club. So it allowed Struth to focus more on the playing side, although he did get involved in other elements of administration as well. But it was quite a radical change in football at that time, probably highlighting the wide-ranging role that William Wilton had, but certainly when Bill Struth came in, it defined the role more akin to what we see in the modern day.